Hello movie barfs and welcome back to the channel. Black Widow was a movie that was supposed to be released last year, got delayed to this year, but ideally should have come out 7 years ago. As everyone expected, it was a pretty mediocre entry into the MCU, and extremely inconsequential in the big picture. I actually did enjoy some aspects of the film, but that's not why you're here. So like the classic good news, bad news scenario, let's delve into the stuff I found not so enjoyable first. Of course, spoiler alert as usual, we'll be covering important plot points from here on, so come back after you've seen it. Number 5. Black Widow is ridiculously OP. Maybe I missed something, but I have no recollection of Natasha being on super soldier serum or being physically enhanced in any way. I thought she was just a regular human trained in espionage and expert hand-to-hand combat skills. In this movie, she's really overpowered. Just look at this scene here where she survives a fall from a building without a scratch. Even Captain America had some after effects from a fall of a significantly shorter height. Later, she survives a car crash and is perfectly fine, and that part at the end where she can hold her own against what seems like 20 widows, all who've had the same training as her, that fight should have been over in like 3 seconds. Instead, she's dispatching them like they're expendable goons when they're supposed to be at the same level as her. Perhaps it's because the filmmakers know that Natasha is effectively invulnerable since she has to live till Endgame, so they pretty much had a free pass to do whatever crazy stunts they needed her to do. But the fact remains that there wasn't much tension for Natasha in her fight scenes, and it detracted from the movie experience. Number 4. The plot was boring. Well, you could say I was a victim of my own expectations here, but based on the trailers and the hype around it, I thought we were going to get a deep dive into Natasha's past and her psyche. Instead, the plot could be summarized in the following sentences. Natasha asks Yelena for the location of the Red Room. Yelena doesn't know, so they decide to ask Alexei. Alexei doesn't know either, so they decide to ask Melina. Melina takes them there, and they destroy the evil James Bond lair floating in the sky. And that's it. Roll credits. This was what we were waiting for so many years? Alright, but on a serious note, it felt rather underwhelming and lackluster. And not to sound like a broken record, but it's all inconsequential in the big picture. This movie's plot is something you can skip if you're not a diehard MCU fan. Instead, they tease you once again with the Budapest mission yet again. And by this time you could say the Budapest mission is the MCU equivalent of the Millennium Falcon's Kessel Run. Number 3. Wasted characters. You knew this was coming, but it's not for who you think it is. Roast me if you want in the comments, but I thought Taskmaster was alright. Probably because pretty much all I know about the character comes from the side missions in the Spider-Man PS4 game. I guess he's the Marvel equivalent of Deathstroke of some sorts. Let me know in the comments if I'm mistaken. So, they took some creative differences from the source material, but I found the character to have a very effective menacing presence, like an assassin that you can't shake off. I just wish the character had more screen time and actually did something more impactful. The character that disappointed me more was David Harbour's Alexei, aka Red Guardian, or Captain Russia. The movie did a great job showing his superhuman strength, and there was a certain weight with him when he moved. You got the feel that he was a human dynamo that could plow his way through anything. And regarding his so-called skirmish with Captain America, my stance is that he's lying, since like the film said, Steve was still frozen in ice in the 80s, and also because Alexei got pretty defensive at that rebuttal, to the point of breaking the other guy's hand. I sure hope it isn't like some of the wilder theories out there, that maybe he fought an alternate version of Steve that time-traveled back to the 80s. Or actually, that might be quite fun. What do you folks think? My money's on him still lying about it based on how defensive he became. Alright, but anyway, Red Guardian was so underutilized in this one. I didn't get how someone as strong as him could be held captive in a regular jail with ordinary inmates. And despite all that hype the film built up around him, he was hardly of any help in handling Taskmaster at the end. He just fumbled around until the ladies came along to finish the job. He was just reduced to cheap and lame humor. I mean, how does he not know he's not wearing an earpiece? And after all that talk about wanting to break something, he gets his ass handed to him by Taskmaster. Number 2. That silly ending. This one's a combination of stuff, but they mainly relate to Ray Winstone's character, the Dreykov guy. So his defense against Natasha is his so-called pheromonal lock, where smelling him would prevent her from hitting him? Are you kidding me? Never mind that Natasha already knows about it, so I can overlook him telling her that. But the fact that he would rely on it and feel safe from it is just silly. As the film showed, it was so easy to circumvent it. And breaking your own nose? It's like the film showed a laughable solution to a laughable problem. It reminds me of Kilgrave in Jessica Jones, actually, where I keep wondering why any of the good guys don't just wear earplugs so that they can't hear his verbal commands. Problem solved. Even the Agent Carter TV show had something like that at the end of its first season, and it worked. But the worst thing about Dreykov is that absolute cringe of a line where he says something about the one resource the world has too much of: girls. Yeah, girls. I honestly don't know how this got approved to the final stage. That line has got to be one of the worst written lines I've heard in a movie for quite some time. Oh, cue the internal barfing because that line really deserves it. And at the end, I found it a strange choice that they just ended with Natasha standing around while Ross and his team were almost surrounding her. And then the camera just cuts and she's back in Norway with her friend. So what happened after that? Was she just meant to pose there all the way? That post-credit scene was laughable too. Hawkeye responsible for Natasha's death? How on earth would Valentina even know they were together out in space in the first place? And number 1, the BS Family Dynamic. I saved the worst for last. This was my biggest issue with this movie. I didn't buy their family dynamic one bit or this sudden change of heart for a reunion. It was a cheap ploy by Disney to make the ending more family-friendly. The movie clearly establishes somewhere in the midpoint that their family was fake, that it was just a construct meant to help their time undercover. None of them are actually related. They've hardly spent any time together, except maybe a bit more between Natasha and Yelena. But the fact remains that it was all strictly business, and there were never any familial ties between them. Not to mention the fact that they haven't been with each other for more than 20 long years. They have this reunion dinner scene which was supposed to trigger nostalgia of some sorts, but to me it just fell completely flat with no payoff. And at the end, they're all united and hugging each other like the Incredibles family. It's completely inconsistent and not to mention very unconvincing. What's insulting is that Yelena has that line where she says the best part of her life was fake and she didn't know it? Really? Even after the stage holiday photo shoots in one day? Realistically, they should be unable to stand being in the presence of each other. And Alexei and Melina's sudden change of heart and allegiance at the end. It just comes out of left field that Alexei would become a sentimental family man at the end when he never really cared for Natasha or Yelena. Now, don't get me wrong, despite these flaws, overall I still kinda enjoyed this movie. It's not anything epic or groundbreaking, but it can still pass off for a movie you can just sit back and relax to. And given that the script was only written in 11 days, I guess we can cut them some slack. The best thing about this film is how it sets up Yelena as the new Black Widow, and it'll be interesting to see how the torch passes on to her in the Hawkeye series. She totally stole the show in a film that's supposed to center around Natasha. Red Guardian was charismatic and fun to watch too, and I hope we get to see more of him in future MCU entries. Wrapping it up here, folks, but what was your main gripe with this movie? And are you excited about the upcoming Hawkeye series? Let me know down in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a like. It helps the channel out more than you know. Subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you next time.